Hi. The almighty ancient Rome, the civilization of many seas, which defeated most of its enemies, forged an empire, and left a myriad of epic monuments for the future generations, thanks to the tears, sweat, and blood of countless wretched enslaved people. But what if I told you that this might be an incomplete portrait created by pop culture misconceptions? What if a slave could be several times more powerful than an ordinary free man? Let's find out. During his long professional career, the prestigious Hungarian historian Geza Foldi defended on multiple occasions his theory that the pyramidal structure of the Roman social hierarchy from the late Republic and the early Empire was not strictly horizontal, but had a remarkable degree of verticality. That meant the quality of life level of a freeborn man, a freedman, or a slave was not entirely linked to his legal status, but to his wealth, his contacts, and in the case of the latter ones, on who was his patron. Let's see one historic example to illustrate this point. In the course of the numerous wars in the 2nd century BC between Rome and Macedon, with the goal to gain influence over mainland Greek territory, as usual, some towns and cities decided to resist against the legions, and as a result, once defeated, a certain number of their population became enslaved. However, unlike what movies and TV shows have depicted, the new servants were not sent en masse to some deep, God-forsaken mines, but instead were sold or auctioned in local or italic slave markets with a price related to their traits or past job skills, ranging from simple male and female sex workers to qualified accountants and clerks. Being of special interest for the Romans' ruling class, those former philosophers, poets, or orators who could teach classical Greek to their heirs, since Hellenism was starting to become a trend among prosperous families. Fast forward to Augustus, and we encounter the most fortunate known slaves of the ancient world. So given that the first emperor had the ambition to build an incredibly efficient state administration, one that would not challenge his power nor cause many headaches, he decided to surround himself with illustrious slaves who would faithfully follow his orders and not get too creative with their new position. As such, they became part of the imperial family, being covered by its legal protection, thus making reports and directly advising the emperor himself, hence fueling the envy and resentment of senators, equestrians, and other reputable statesmen alike, who could not comprehend how some men forever stained with dishonor could hold roles of utmost importance while they were exempt. Of course, killing a single one of these privileged slaves was out of the question, since it would have been a direct attack on the emperor's property. Over time, some of those slaves would be freed for their services. Many of them continued to hold their previous public office, managing to amass solid fortunes both through legal means and through greed and corruption, with which they would employ to found brotherhoods, buy properties, businesses, or even their own slaves. Without a doubt, a completely different fate awaited the society's humblest, who would have to bear the shame of having once been slaves for the rest of their lives, even though their future children would be born as clean, free men. This labor practice would be repeated and reinforced by coming emperors, especially by the troublesome ones like Commodus, whose persistent hostilities toward the Roman elites would make them highly dependent on the trust of their domestic staff. Nevertheless, such pleasant situations would finally come to an end with the advent of the crisis of the 3rd century, when the constant changes of the head of state, usually prompted by military coups or bloody revolts, would finish up endangering the lives of court personnel, since they would often be seen as an extension of the dethroned emperor. For instance, in 211, after Caracalla henchman killed his emperor brother Geta, he immediately ordered the execution of his closest slaves and liberti. In conclusion, thanks to the extreme violence within state politics, the constant decrease in the influx of new slaves, especially the most skilled ones, and the many changes, of course, in the Roman labor market, the most opulent known slaves would gradually fade away from the history pages of the Western Roman Empire.